Hi, friends, and welcome back to Marvelous Friends, your home for all things Marvel's Cinematic Universe and beyond. I'm Rhett, and today I'm talking the last season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Roll that credit. Sunday, May 27th, we will receive the premiere of the final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on ABC. This will be the closing effort of Marvel TV, who has since been absorbed into the greater Marvel Studios and will no longer be responsible for any of the TV production moving forward. What it appears so far is anything that Marvel Studios has planned as far as TV or series style productions is wholly on the Disney Plus platform at this time. Marvel TV was responsible for providing us the Defenders team on Netflix, the Runaways on the Hulu streaming platform, as well as the freeform show Cloak and Dagger, and of course the three shows on ABC Agent Carter, The Inhumans, and of course Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It is interesting to note here that the first of these Disney Plus series was to premiere in August, and this was to be the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series, which at this time has not seen any delays in its release time, which that doesn't mean it won't see them. Many of the theater releases have been rescheduled at this time, but it may be because the production schedule is ahead of schedule and they feel confident that even with a few months shutdown, they can still meet this August deadline. However, if this shutdown of the production continues for too long, we could still see those delays. But that's not the point as to why this is interesting. What is most interesting is that with the premiere date of May 27th and there being 13 episodes in this season, that puts, as long as there are no breaks in weekly premieres of episodes, that the show will end in somewhere mid-August, around the 19th, if my calculations are correct, which would then line up perfectly for the launch of the Disney Studios series on Disney Plus. I'm sure this was agreed upon and carefully calculated out to happen this way, with Marvel TV seeing its last production before Marvel Studios takes over in theirs. Now, we don't have a specific time within August that we are to receive Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so we could still see a little bit of overlap here, but I still think that timing was very intentional. However, that is not what I'm here to talk about either, so I will continue on. What I'm doing today is a prediction on what I think we can expect in this final season, and I'm going to do this in a top 5 countdown, which is a slight change up on my other production videos, which you can check those out on my channel. I will link one up in the card. So with that said, let's jump into it with my number 5 on the list. Number 5, the team returns to the present day successful. Or at least most of them will. Here's an obvious one, so I'm just going to get it out of the way and place it at the bottom of this list. It wouldn't be a good superhero story, after all, if the team isn't successful and happy in the end. So what we'll see here is that through the events of the show, we will see them eventually return to the present day, or whatever the present day for this series is. It is getting a little confusing with so much of the time travel that they are doing within the series. That aside, though, I'm sure we will see this come to fruition. Now, with the series being about 13 episodes, I would anticipate that around episode 12, if not episode 11, we will see this happen so that we can explore what the future now looks like with this happy ending and get to say all of our goodbyes. Now, those will be kind of a mixed bag, but we can talk about that later. Now, as far as how they will be successful, I think it's an obvious one of two options. The first is that when they're in the past, they alter something that helps them in the future. This could be by planting information or straight up going after their Comic-Cons. Now, this latter option would be, in my opinion, a little less likely. Space travel was a lot of what made up the first half of the season 6, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't one really to repeat their plots too much. There are, of course, references and tie-ins to previous stories, but they don't usually do the exact same thing over and over again, which is what made the series so exciting. Plus, with them being in the past, I don't really see them going out on a space voyage. It just doesn't make logical sense. So the other option is planting information that is going to potentially help the future. And I kind of see this as maybe they providing the technology and know-how as to set up a inhabitable planet or moon for the Chromicons to inherit in the future by tampering with different things and giving some very key information, but not too much information to alter the past in too big a way. Now, of course, the other option as to how they can save the day is to come back in the future, regrouped and ready to take on the Chromicons in some way. But again, this is what we kind of saw in the previous season as they returned to the past with new information and ready to take on the day after being regrouped. And again, they're not one to repeat plots, excuse me, so I don't see this happening either. And so my biggest thing is that they're going to do something in the past to alter the future and prevent the Chronicons from ever coming to Earth. And we kind of have a slight confirmation of this in that one of the previews we see the LMD of Phil Coulson specifically say we have to save Hydra. So expect some serious time tampering in the past to affect the future. Number 4, Season 3 of Agent Carter. It seems that Agent Carter is finally getting its true final season in the same manner that Cloak and Dagger received their third and final season, and that is through the means of a crossover. And ironically, also being crossed over into another series that's receiving their final season. In the case for Cloak and Dagger, they crossed over with Runaways on Hulu, and that served as both of the franchise's third season and final season. So that's kind of ironic that we're seeing the same thing here with the Agent of Carter crossover into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and it kind of providing a final season for both. And it's much needed for Agent of Carter. Honestly, after the second season of Cloak and Dagger, it ended in a really good place that could have cleared out the story and I would have been happy with it. The end of season 2, I was not happy with how that closed out for Agent Carter. There was a lot of unexplored stories and a lot still to kind of play out in the series, in my opinion. It seemed that really the series was supposed to kind of fill in the gap of what happens in Agent Carter's life between the point of saying goodbye to Cap and the end of his film and the start of the actual organization of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the one shot where she receives a call from Tony Stark to start S.H.I.E.L.D. itself. And we just hadn't gotten to that point. When she left in the end of season 2, she was still very much so in the middle of her SSR days, and she was just starting to butt into a little bit of romance. So I hope that the production team from Agent of Carter has been highly involved in this process to ensure the proper use of the characters and to close out their stories in a great way as they were initially intended to. And I think it's a very important piece of choice here that kind of alludes to the fact because honestly the team could have went back to anywhere in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s history to take advantage of the information and history that Agent Coulson has and is available now in his LMD to fix whatever they needed to fix. But they specifically chose that the team needed to come back to the days before S.H.I.E.L.D. is actually founded, which is when, of course, the Agent Carter story takes place. And we've kind of seen that we will get to see at least some level of continuation of these stories, as it has been confirmed that Sosa will be returning for this final season as well. So I hope we get to see more of the Agent Carter series team kind of sprinkled in as well and get to explore what happens with all of them. Number 3, someone will stay behind. To parallel the greater MCU as they often do, I suspect that we will see someone stay behind ultimately in the past when the rest of the team travels back to the present day. Much like Captain America chose to stay in the past when he returned all the stones to where they belong, rather than coming back to where he was in the current timeline and spending his days out with Peggy Carter. Now, who this could be? Well, it really could be anyone, but if I had to put my money on it, I would say Mac Yo-Yo and the newly double displaced in time, Flint. Because Mac has always longed for a simpler life. It's something that he is very characteristically known for, whether it's spending days with his brother or staying in the framework with his daughter who is still alive in that universe, Hope. And it's just something that they really could play up and would be a great nod to these previous stories without repeating them and finally seeing him to get the happy, simple life that he's always wanted. Besides, Mac has never been one to really enjoy all the crazy things that being a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. has really kind of thrown into his life. He's often complained about the Inhumans, the space travel, the time travel, and dimension hopping that's really happened throughout the entire series. It's of course something he comes around to in time, but really it bothers him every time he's faced with one of these big next changes in what his reality is. and nothing screams a simpler life like 40s and 50s Americana. And of course, because of his close ties and the rebutting of their relationship, I'm sure Yo-Yo will stay behind. And I included Flint in this as well because he is most commonly tied to these other two characters, and I most likely see him kind of staying behind and adopting into a family of sorts, with them kind of accepting him as their son. Besides, he didn't have any parents in the future, anyways. Perhaps he finds himself persuaded to stay behind at the opportunity to help establish S.H.I.E.L.D. in its original kind of state and set those groundworks at a simpler time in its history. Plus, I don't really see this fitting with anyone else. And I also want to say I don't think we'll see any hitchhikers through time travel like we saw at the end of season 6 with Deke and Flint. Meaning I don't see anyone from the past coming to the future, whether that is on purpose by choice or by accident. And I also don't see anyone staying behind by accident either. It's 100% choice. If it was to be any of these other ways of time travel displacement, it would require more story that we're just not going to get at this point, and I don't think they're going to leave too many loose ends for the main characters. Number 2, Black Widow and Falcon and the Winter Soldier tie-ins. The Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show has always lived in a parallel world to the greater MCU, while still standing alone in its own right. Well, after season 2, it did. The first season really was kind of it figuring out how to do its own thing while still incorporating the greater MCU. How we saw that move forward, though, was really great, and we saw a lot of tie-ins in those early seasons to Asgardians. And then in the later seasons, we see major tie-ins to Captain Marvel and the Kree. And with what we're going to see in this final season, I suspect that it will tie into what is most relevant in the MCU. And that right now is Black Widow and, of course, the upcoming Falcon and the Winter Soldier series. Now, I already mentioned the very interesting timing of the finale of this season and, of course, the launch of the Disney Plus show Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There's another very interesting timing issue here as well, and that's the fact that the Black Widow was supposed to originally air in theaters 2 weeks before the season premiere of this series. And I think that is very interesting timing, especially considering the involvement of Agent Carter, who already has major tie-ins to the Black Widow story. In Agent Carter, a major player and still loose thread for the series is Dottie Underwood, who is a graduate of the Red Room, just like Black Widow is. And we actually saw a very early version of the Red Room in the series that directly involved Peggy Carter. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that here because it's relevant and important and would tie in greatly with the film. Now, I don't suspect this to be anything that would be a tie-in that is spoiler-filled, because if that was the case when they moved the release date of the Black Widow film, they would also have pushed this back, because they are very careful not to spoil anything, and if there was a chance of that, they definitely wouldn't do so. But I definitely suspect the name to be dropped and a reference to the Red Room at some point throughout this 13-episode run. I also want to say that I've often thought that the idea of the super soldier serum is going to be a next phase major issue, primarily as one of the consequences of all the time travel and Captain America staying behind in the past. And we also now have another super soldier with a perfected serum in their system in the past as well, in Daisy Johnson. Now, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. team has come across various versions of the super soldier serum throughout the 7-season run of the show. And at the end of season 6, a perfected version of that serum is now in Daisy Johnson, kind of mixing everything that they've come across together in a perfect solution. So having these two super soldiers are definitely going to play into that future of super enhanced soldiers kind of everywhere in the MCU. We've already seen a little bit of this, again, tying into Black Widow. Taskmaster is one such super soldier, and we know that Captain America US Agent is also going to make an appearance in the series on Disney Plus. So there's two right there. So definitely be looking out for that in the future as in tie-ins. Anything beyond that, it's anyone's guess, but those are my two big ones. And like I said, I do have a video on how I think the super soldier serum, say that 5 times fast, will be a major player in the next phase of the MCU. You can check that video out in the card. Number 1, no Captain America. Despite the team going back to visit Agent Carter in her days within the beginnings of S.H.I.E.L.D., and we know that, of course, Captain America stays behind in the past to spend out his days with her. I don't think these two timelines are going to coincide. And that's not that we're in two different parallel universes here either within the greater multiverse. I think we are sticking within the same one. I just feel that Captain America goes back to a different point in Peggy Carter's life. Most likely just coming to be in her life at the point that he took the Tesseract from the old SHIELD base. It's what makes the most sense because that's where he knows exactly where she is, and we see them dancing in their home, not at the club next week, as it was described at the end of the Captain America, the First Avenger film. If that was the case and that was the point he was going back to, they definitely would have showed them in the dance hall, not in the living room. Now, we also don't really get a great look at Peggy Carter and her appearance in Endgame and to see how they aged her and all that, but it still seems it's relatively close to when this series is. Though the father of Tony Stark is definitely different between those two time periods, but that's a different issue. So, what do I expect here? I expect that we will get kind of an ending of the Sosa series of the love life of Peggy Carter and see what happens there. After all, their love story was just getting started. Now, I expect that we will get some references and mentions of Steve Rogers throughout the season. After all, he is a big idol of Phil Coulson, and we do know that at some point Captain America does go back. Perhaps this series ending just as he returns. It'd be kind of an interesting way that they could place this specifically in the MCU timeline, and I wouldn't hate that either. But I don't suspect any screen time for Chris Evans in this series. Those are my 5 predictions for this closing out of the series of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the final 7th season. I would love to know what you all think as well. What do you expect from this final season? Let me know down in those comments. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I also changed up my prediction format and turned it into a countdown list. So let me know your thoughts on this format and if you prefer it over my traditional prediction videos I've done in the past. For example, I'll link one of them up in the card. Other than that, though, that is going to do it today. I do have some more ideas and expectations, so perhaps I'll put together another list as well. We'll see in the weeks leading up to the launch of this final season. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, please give it a like, subscribe, and set the alerts to catch all my future videos. It helps the channel grow and helps others find it as well. I appreciate you watching. I hope you have a marvelous rest of your day. Bye, friend.